The joy of the Lord is your strength. Had to make sure I was on the same page. The joy of the Lord is your strength. That was a good. I love that at the end of the first reading. The joy of the Lord is your strength. And today we bring together two passages. And I don't know why it didn't dawn on me sooner, but it dawned on me this morning as we were driving to church that they're at both ends of the second temple. In the first reading from Nehemiah, we heard about a time when the temple, the second temple, was just been rebuilt. Jerusalem, the Jews were just beginning to come back to Jerusalem. They had been conquered and captured. The first temple had been destroyed by the Babylonians. There we go. And they had been hauled back to Babylon and other places in captivity and dispersed and spread about. And so they're the center of their world, the temple, that with their life, the locus of God, it was all gone. And they'd been in captivity for generations. Maybe thought they would never return to Jerusalem. But then these folks, known as the Persians, conquered the Babylonians, and they thought it wasn't such a good idea to keep, whatever it was put upon them maybe by God, to go and to begin to allow the Jews to be restored to their homeland. And so, first, the emperor, the king of the Persians, a guy named Artaxerxes, first went and sent a group of Jewish people who wanted to return to the land, under the leadership of a person named Zerubbabel, and they went back and they began to rebuild the temple. Did I get that right? I don't know. It could be. And then what? Well, the wall, right. So then there was a group of people who rebuilt the wall. Maybe they rebuilt the wall. I guess they rebuilt the wall first, right? And that's under another person. Another group went to rebuild the wall. They rebuilt the temple. And then they had to restore worship at the temple. And that's what we read this morning about Ezra restoring worship in the temple. And the people were gathered, and they built a platform for him to stand on, and the scrolls of the law had been found, and so this is the books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. The books of Moses have been found, and he began to read them from there. He was surrounded by, and this is why some of the pronouns were kind of weird in the first reading, because they cut out all these people. He was surrounded by about 24 leaders of Israel up there on the platform, the stage, if you will. And he began to read from the law. Early in the morning, all the people gathered there, and he read and read and read. And as he read, these various people around him would help provide interpretation and help the people understand. And the people rejoiced because the Word of God was being made real to them again. Something they thought would never happen, something their parents, their grandparents thought might never happen, was happening here in Jerusalem, the place, right, where the temple had stood. The temple was standing again. The wall was rebuilt. And they were filled with joy. And that joy is the joy of the Lord in their presence and in their midst. Do I have my... Yeah, I do. Okay. I can turn my mic on. It's a joyful scene. It's a joyous scene. It's people hearing the Word of God and being brought to joy or brought to tears of joy in finally this moment coming where their world is back together again. Now we set that against an event that happened near the end of the life of the Second Temple. Jesus in the synagogue at Nazareth. So now there's not only the temple, but there's also synagogues. There's places of worship in each little town. You only go to Jerusalem now for festivals and things like that. So there's more accessibility to the religion, if you will, to people practicing their faith. And he's at his synagogue in his hometown. About 30 years after this event, the Romans will come in and will level the temple, level Jerusalem, disperse the Jews again, and reverse everything that the Persians had done. Persians, just now think about, let's pause. This is an aside. I'm sorry, it's a squirrel maybe. But think about this. So it's the Persian emperor Artaxerxes who starts to bring the Jews back to Israel, back to Jerusalem. Persia is modern day Iran. That's not exactly the position of Iran today, is it? Now, Iran's got some animosity towards Israel. They can't imagine them bringing Jews back to the homeland. And yet their actions still seem to be increasing faith in Israel. How God works. So Jesus in the synagogue at Nazareth now, religion is accessible. It's available to everybody in their hometown. They don't have to pilgrimage to Jerusalem necessarily. And they're at their hometown. And he comes to speak to the people in the synagogue. Now, they knew him growing up from the time he came back from Egypt. He was a small boy. And they saw him, learn from his father his trade as a carpenter and be practicing that there in the community. Repairing things, fixing things in people's homes, helping them on their farms. And so there's this man, Jesus, and they've heard the things that are going on out in Galilee. So Nazareth is a little bit closer to Jerusalem. Jesus has been operating in the low country, out in the sticks. But now he's back in his hometown, and they've heard all the good things he's done out in those places, and they're kind of expecting the same thing here. And so he stands up in the synagogue. They hand him the scroll, and he enrolls it to this place in the prophet Isaiah and begins to read about God's actions to restore everything. And they think, now's the time. And of course, in Israel in general at this point, there's this sense that there's a transformative moment, like something is about to happen. There's a desire that the Romans be thrown off, and there's constant prayer to God that happen. And so there's all these expectations. And of course, the people of Nazareth have heard about him healing people and turning water into wine and making, feeding people and all kinds of stuff. And so they're thinking, certainly in his hometown, he's gonna show his stuff. And then he says to them, he offers two reflections on this passage from Isaiah about the transformation about to come. Both of them about foreigners. The widow in Zarephath, not a Jew. And how one of their most revered prophets, Elijah, went to her and blessed her with having food through a time of famine. And was welcomed by her and was welcomed by her and sustained by her. Not someone in Israel. And then on top of that, he piles the story of Naaman and Naaman's healing of leprosy. Again, how a Jewish prophet had gone to Nathan and had cleansed him of leprosy. Nathan was the commander of the Syrian army that had often harassed and conquered parts of Israel over centuries. So Jesus offers up these two things of how when God didn't seem to be active in Israel, God was active on behalf of foreigners, of others, of non-Jews. How could that be? They were enraged. How could Jesus even suggest this interpretation of their greatest prophet, Isaiah, that God was not just for the Jewish people, but for all people? They were enraged. So enraged that they drove him off out of the town. They went to throw him off the hill. Nazareth is on a hill. They were going to pitch him off the hill. He's one of their own. He's a son of their own. And that is at the end of the Second Temple period. So we go from this place in the beginning when people are weeping with joy to hear the Word of God and its interpretation and application, to the end of the Second Temple period when people are enraged because the Word of God suggests something other than, according to Jesus, suggests something other than what they think it should. That's a significant transition. And so it stands, I think those two postures are there before us. There's the one in the middle, of course, that's just complete apathy. We see a lot of that today. But I ask you, how does the Word of God strike you? This is God speaking to us. This is the God that said, "Let there be light." And there was light. This word, this speech from God has power. It has power to transform the physical world. It has power to transform our hearts. And yet, like the people at Nazareth, we're free to reject it. God doesn't compel us to embrace the Word. God offers it to us. And when we embrace it and come closer into contact with its transforming power, it changes us. And when we push it away or just ignore it, we get like the people at Nazareth, kind of self-centered and kind of misguided. So we have this gift before us, this Word of God. And in the person of Jesus, the Word of God made flesh come down into our midst so that we might have a face and a closer sense of how this Word of God is for us. Do we embrace it? Do we walk away from it? Do we get angry at it and attempt to force it out of our lives? I don't know. And also, we are bearers of this same Word. We are bearers of this same Word to other people in what we say and in what we do, in who we are, in their presence. And God sends us out as, just like Jesus, as embodiments of His Word, so that everyone may be offered life if they want it. If they want it. We are bearers of this Word. And in bearing the Word of God, in immersing ourselves in the Word of God, in embracing this gift, we find joy. The joy that the psalmist speaks of, the joy that Nehemiah spoke of or wrote of. The joy of the Lord comes to us through His Word, and our openness to His Word shaping our lives. May we all embrace God's holy word, that his will be done, his kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven. The joy of the Lord is our strength.